Alrighty. So today is Tuesday, although it took me a while to figure that out because I accidentally took uh, two pills of a medication. It was actually my doctor who told me to do this because one of them wasn't working. Ooh, two works really well for the pain, but let's just say I wasn't conscious until about now, and this was sometime yesterday. And I don't remember what time it was yesterday that I took the second pill. It's probably like, sometime in the mid-afternoon. I'm just kind of piecing that together because I don't remember. Wow. That's kind of a little scary. But what I want to talk about today isn't that. I'm actually sucking down coffee and smoking as we right now to kind of get awake and hopefully get through a show because this is my job. This is what I like to do. This is my career, at least. And I was watching Computing Forever. I usually do. I don't consider him like alt-right. Just like I don't consider most feminists like, radical third wave, crazy people. And he was talking about college campuses and, again, some more kind of just crazy things going on in college campuses where somebody's pushing some sort of agenda that's getting just uglier and uglier. And it's disappointing. It really is. And I really just want to kind of send out a message to the kids who are in college right now and they're suffering through this. One, there are a lot of classes online. All right, so if you want to learn something, you can actually go into that. And I don't know if you can get credit for it, but to enrich yourself, there's a lot of resources available. And you can be, if you're a computer science major or of that ilk, or grew up with an iPad in your hand, then, it might be a good idea to kind of create that network for people and, be the next Zuckerberg, but with educational resources so people don't have to go to a lot of these college classes that are just kind of ridiculous now. The view is so one-sided. And it's the professors who are really pushing their own sort of agenda, their own pseudo-agenda, whatever they understand that to be. And it's getting further and further away from reality. And that's one of the points I want to make. A college is a microcosm that can go in all sorts of different evolutions. Remember, evolution just means change. It doesn't mean change for the better necessarily. It's almost like saying change is always happening, and sometimes that change is better. When it does, it's kept. When it isn't, it's not kept. Kind of like if humans really needed to swim in oceans all the time, they probably would have developed webbed hands along the way, kind of like ducks. So let's imagine that this was more of an aquatic world with just like thin slivers of land that we lived on, and we were more of an aquatic mammal. We might develop some sort of webbed hands or, fins or whatever. We might actually almost devolve because that would actually fit the environment better. Does that make sense? So when I say that there are these evolutions going on in campus, I'm just meaning, these changes. I'm referring to just kind of these random changes, and over time they're thrown out or kept. But right now there's a lot that needs to be kind of thrown out, and I feel sorry for you if you're in that. If you're either a leftist or a rightist, whatever your views are. Alt-right and third wave, or alt-left. I'll just call them alt-left and alt-right. These guys aren't on the spectrum. They're something different. They're beyond the spectrum because they're pretty fascist, both sides, and that's something we kind of threw out of our spectrum as Americans. Remember World War II, fighting fascism? Not just Hitler, but Mussolini and a bunch of their other Axis allies. We kind of threw that out of the spectrum. It's just not acceptable in Americana. So anytime a group goes towards that, whether it's alt-right or alt-left, they're kind of immediately put out of the spectrum. So when we have the leftists going fascist, we know they're not really representing Americans. They're representing this small group that they think they are. And unfortunately, what they do is they kind of target people who may be having a hard time, maybe don't feel so good about themselves, maybe have some deficits, and they'll go for those people and recruit from that. And these poor people who really do need help in all sorts of areas, they get kind of bombarded by all these people trying to suck them in. Because, the more desperate for friends you are, the more likely it is that one of these groups will try to kind of find you and hunt you down and get you to join. It's a bit sad. So I really suggest avoiding becoming part of your college's culture until you kind of know what's going on. If you want to, why don't you use college for what it was meant for? Not just to learn, chemistry or biology or, one of the STEMs or whatever you're going into as a job training, which is pretty much what it's devolved into. So you don't really have any sort of learning outside of that anyway, except for these kind of, like super leftist classes. So go on the internet and kind of find, just information. Give it a shot. It's kind of like when a lot of people, when they first go to college, they have an undeclared major, and they might take a bunch of 101 classes and find out they like one of those classes more than anything else. For me, that was psychology. I did that whole thing after being like a marketing, accounting, business student. That I thought I was going to get an MBA, but then I took a bunch of 101s, and psychology really, really fit me. So I went for that. But I never stopped reading books, and now you have those books pretty much available online. And not like textbooks. I'm talking about actual books that adults read. And the internet is this amazing resource that, like I said, I had it in the form of paper books. I could go to all sorts of discount bookstores and get all sorts of information. Now you have it. It could be an EPUB or a Kindle file or or just PDF, something that you heard of, like some good books, Daban, Propaganda by Bernays. Try to get a kind of understanding of what's going on and the tricks of the trade when it comes to manipulating people. And I'm going to help with that as much as I can. Pushing knowledge on critical thinking and as I see things pop up in current events, I'll try to make examples of them. But these microcosms you're in aren't the real world. Because they're a microcosm, they've evolved in certain ways because of different environments. And the thing is that you're looking to become independent in the real world. So going with the college mentality, one, you probably already kind of feel it's weird. You're not very comfortable with it. And two, it's not leading anywhere but maybe a professorship at a college. And if that's what you want to do, all power to you. But is that really what you want to do? I don't think everybody who goes to college can become a professor at the same college. That just one class and then you have professors for the next 1,000 years. So it's not really something that you can go into reliably if everyone does it, right? Because then there's no room. So what do? Well, what did you want to do? Look into that. And I suggest taking some computer science. Any bit of that helps. I know you were probably born with an iPad in your hand if I'm talking to like a Gen Y or Gen Z. But computers have kind of been dumbed down. They're getting easier and easier to use until there's a problem. And the person who can fix those problems is is always valuable. I'm not just talking about as an IT person, but just, maybe your home network. Maybe you're sitting there, maybe your spouse isn't very computer astute and they break something and you got to figure out how to fix it. Knowing about these things is very valuable because it's going to be ubiquitous, and it already pretty much is. So there's something that's good to kind of bone up on. There are things by Prometric, which are some of the certifications that you'd have to take if you were a computer science major anyway. They're called A+, Net Plus, and Security Plus. And you could look into the materials for that because they're very laid out to teach you a lot of good things. And they're updated constantly. And you don't necessarily have to take the test unless you want to kind of go into the field, but it could be a backup job anyway, since everything will be networked, everything's internet, so blah, blah, blah. Also web design, awesome thing. Even if it's just, putting together the website so you could express things, people are going to need that too, because there are people like me who kind of hit an ADHD wall and they'll never really learn web design. Everything has to be kind of dumbed down for them. I'm one of those people, so I'm not making fun of anybody. But kind of keep your head down, use the time to get into the real world, get into real world skills. Even if they aren't part of your major, they're always going to kind of help you out and get into real world information, because that's another thing that wasn't really available for me 10 years ago, when the internet wasn't as easy to use and it was more kind of giant AOL buttons and stuff like that, and chat rooms and stuff like that. It's really changed form where you have people disseminating information in all these different ways, these great YouTubers, these great podcasters, and they are basically replacing mainstream media. So we're going to need a lot of people to go into this and to, be independent journalists and to actually learn what journalism really is, to actually learn how things work by looking into all sorts of snippets from Debon and from Bernays and all the modern PR people that are manipulating the masses. And so you could kind of, see through those manipulations. Even a little bit of that goes a long way. But if you want to get into it, you could podcast like I'm doing. Like I said, you can YouTube if you're more a video person. And there are ways to make some money at that. But also, if you're going to college, and this isn't ubiquitous, but a lot of people get into college and they really just want to kind of further the progress of man, of humanity. And educating other people is a great way to do that. So if you have some sort of platform you want to go on, you want to make a platform, you want to form networks with other people who are trying to be journalists and are learning kind of the old school ways of journalism, but applying it to the new platforms and kind of hopping over the mainstream media. Because we're replacing them. We're actively replacing them. And I see a time when we're going to have sort of associations and union kind of things where we'll be kind of this loose association that can at least kind of come to some sort of goals and pillars, and then we could kind of push that as kind of a special interest group. It's weird because everything's so different that it's even what to call such a group, of, let's say, YouTubers and podcasters and independent media people, is we almost don't even know what to call it. So the times they are changing, and you're in the beginning of this change if you're a young adult, and you have the impetus and just the damn lucky timing of being at the beginning of a new type of free press that we haven't seen since like the pamphleteers. So it's kind of exciting times, and there's a lot of progress that can be made. One of the things that I get a little bit bitchy about, and maybe it's just cognitive dissonance, but I consider myself a progressive, and I know I'm like a fan of Computing Forever, and he calls it regressive news, and he's constantly referring to it as, these crazy progressives. I think a lot of times when you have kind of an enemy, you label them something that not necessarily accurate. I mean, progressives are looking for our universal health care and stuff like that. They have a couple of key issues they all agree on. We want some sort of health care in some form. Mine's a little bit different. We want education to be free in some form. Even Bernie didn't say we should have free private colleges. He only mentioned public colleges. And free isn't really free. I think we all know that. You just pay for it down the line with your tax revenues. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And most people on the left really do know that. It's just that they don't want to, graduate into this huge amount of debt. They'd rather pay the taxes over their lifetime, and slightly higher taxes even. But we're not really going to need to do that if we can just use some common sense. And also, this thought that progressives don't have any compromises with, the well-meaning right, it just isn't true. I mean, when a lot of us think of these kind of programs, we also kind of think of, well, how can we make it cheaper so we're not like taking all this money out of this one guy's pocket to give it to a college student, and he needs that money to feed his family. I mean, this is not like a compassionless thought process until you kind of hit the fascist ends, and then they're just kind of assholes. But I'm free to admit I'm more of a leftist, but I know that there are a lot of assholes on the left, and I'm very disappointed in them, and I turn my back on them. And I don't respect their use of any of the left terms, and I don't see them as progressives. I see them as regressives, much like the guy from Computer Forever does. And I don't see them as on my team. And I'm sure a lot of you in college right now are kind of getting that feeling that it's like, no, they're kind of, they have these weird virtue signaling things, but I don't know if it's really an agenda or it's really virtuous. I'm not sure what's going on. So kind of take a step back. Use college as that step back and just observe. Eventually you get to the point where you're listening to a symphony, and it's kind of a beautiful thing to like watch how these things are all going so wrong. People will practically attack you to take part in one of their protests. Honestly, they don't mean anything anymore. I mean, I think we've all realized that 340 million people, a couple hundred kids at a college campus, or even a couple thousand people in a 9 million member city like New York, is not necessarily that important, because that's a skewed distribution. You'll learn this in statistics. Those are the people that showed up. It's not like they were randomly chosen from the populace, and they're all just so damn into it because it's just so true. You have to stop looking at protests like that. If you like the issue, and you're sure that the people in charge are trustworthy, etc., I'm not saying don't protest. That's your right. But don't think it's some sort of revolution. There's a lot more people not protesting than protesting. People got jobs. People got classes. I remember in college I used to get like 4 or 5 buddies. We'd go to be doing something. Usually, we were a fraternity, so it was to meet some sorority girls, to kind of do a meet and greet with one of the new sororities. And by the time I got upstairs, I was the only guy there. They all had their things to do. One had a broken car he had to get back to because it was going to get towed. These are not like, these are life. And in life you'll learn that you can't really get people together like this unless they're like unemployed and unemployable, or still college students because they wanted to, do the whole graduate school, stay a student forever thing. it's real people, the real people that matter, the people that we're all always saying that we represent but don't. They're busy. They're raising kids. They're delivering the mail and fixing people's cars. They're like the middle management at some retail place. And you'll get probably some sort of shitty retail job either while in college or just out of it. And don't let that skew what you think of people, because you're going to hate the customers no matter where you go. For the most part, you're not going to like most of the customers because people don't really know how to treat people. And that's just kind of a basic human thing. So you're going to be going into the world, and you have the advantage of all these people on the internet telling you how to do that, as opposed to these colleges whose job it was kind of to do that, they've just rescinded their job. They just want you to be like, that's why they have courses like how to reclaim democracy, and then they go, and now here are the fascist ways to reclaim democracy. You're right when you think it's contradictory, and when you have that gut feeling, go with it. These people aren't here for you. They're here to further their agenda. And that's really a horrible thing to do with young people, to take away their preparation for life, to diminish the preparation they might have had when they're literally paying out through the nose. A lot of them are going to have loans until they're 50 or 60. And we're going to take that and use it as a re-education camp. Because most liberal people don't think this way. Okay, a lot of us are coming from kind of purple states at this point, and there's the cities are kind of liberal, the rural areas are a little bit more conservative, but we're not as far apart as we used to be. And then you get into these kind of college campuses, and they're nowhere near anybody that you've ever known or met. Unless you had like an older brother or sister who went to college and they got kind of, re-educated. And we fought as liberals against kind of this re-education thing. And that's not something the right was into either. They didn't want re-education camps. A lot of things, like I said, America's getting purple. A lot of things we agree with. We agree with freedom of speech. There are people all over the spectrum, or, the legitimate spectrum, actually supporting freedom of speech from left, right, center. The only people who don't really support it are the alt-right and the alt-left. So if you support something like freedom of speech, you're already you can't really join those things. They don't believe that. They're not on your side. If you believe in freedom of religion as opposed to what the alt-left thinks is the good religion this week, then you're not going to be in the alt-left either. You're not going to be in the alt-right because they insist on some sort of weird view of Christianity. So you're kind of, neither of those are you going to fit in. You're going to fit in with the vast majority of everybody else. What's wrong with that? You're supposed to be exploring and learning how to kind of get your life up and going, and how to become a part of society and a part of your communities, and how to make a living for yourself, and how to feel good about the living that you have. I know a lot when you were in retail, and most of you had some retail job by now, didn't feel so great, did it? Right? So you got to kind of figure out some way to get out of retail and not just become a middle manager, but to actually get like an adult job. And that's not so easy. You kind of have to have some sort of passion for something. And for me, it was psychology, but as more of a broadcaster, more of an on-air type of person. And that's where my passion is. And I hope that you find yours. I really do. And I know it's not, count a person at Starbucks, but we all got to kind of take our knocks. Or maybe you work at like the college. They always have these kind of like college jobs. By the way, the library is like the easiest. Definitely get that if you can. At least it wasn't my college. So it's you're paying to be prepared for what's going to happen to you after college and what you're going to have to deal with after college, and you're not getting your money's worth. So you're going to kind of have to supplement your education. And people have been doing this in like, these like crappy city colleges, CUNY, whatever Chicago system is. They've had these kind of ultra PC garbage colleges for a long time. And I know a lot of friends of mine who went to CUNY and they were computer science majors. And throughout that whole thing, they were taking all sorts of courses in computers to supplement the education they weren't getting. So this isn't unheard of. This isn't something I'm just making up right now. This has been going on at these colleges for a long time. Community colleges, a lot of times, people would get some sort of external education. In addition to that, they read a bunch of books. They do whatever they had to. So they could feel like they're actually competent. And that's what you're going to have to do nowadays with most things. Maybe if you're a chemistry major and you get to like the best chemistry department in one of the Ivy Leagues, maybe you don't need to do as much. But you would still have to kind of complete your education by kind of getting a political stance that fits you. Getting the information before you actually take that stance, and not just taking a stance because, you like the girl with the purple hair. I'm not going to detract from wanting to, peg the girl with the purple hair. And we've all been there. But it's not something to throw your life out for, And so you're in this period where you have all these possibilities for you to evolve, for you to be something more like you want to be, as opposed to what this campus is telling you to be. Reclaiming democracy through fascism and all that stuff. And you might have to grin a couple of these courses, grin and bear it, because they're always trying to make them like liberal arts requirements. First of all, kind of avoid a liberal arts college. If all that has is liberal arts, it's not really going to teach you anything. It's not going to give you a degree that's worth much. There has to be some sort of science involved. In fact, I remember reading years ago, I was in an associate college, one of those 2-year junior colleges, and I'm reading an article when I'm leaving that a lot of people with associates are actually doing better than people with bachelors because the associates are actually better job training because they're more honed in on that. That's true and not true. Because if you're uneducated to the point where you can't really communicate effectively, that's going to affect any job you have. So, just try to make sure that you can communicate. Make sure you know how to use like a multi-line phone, and you don't look at phones as like some alien device that's going to bite you. Now, I prefer emails and texting and all that stuff. I hate to talk on the phone, but it's and that's weird since I podcast. But in regular conversation, it gets frustrating for me because somebody's talking back and saying things that are oftentimes nonsensical. So it's a lot funner for me to actually just talk into a microphone. And we'll see what happens when I start taking live calls and stuff if my head explodes. Now, Computing Forever gets a lot of letters, and I've seen a lot of his shows where people feel like really repressed in college. They feel like, that having certain political views is just not allowed. And white males have been demonized. It's happening in the DNC, where it's kind of like, white people need not apply. And we kind of fought against that happening against other groups. So it's, if you look at the really big protests or the March for Freedom that Martin Luther King did, about a third white. At least judging from the pictures. Maybe they showcased all the white people, I don't know. But there are plenty of white people fighting for other people's rights. So it feels pretty fucked up when they're literally like the children and grandchildren of the people that might have been on these marches for freedom, and they're literally fighting against our rights. So you can tell that it's not the real world. It's some kind of twisted, weird thing going on. And it's unfortunate when it leaks into society, like I talked about last time. Even if it's an unconscious leak, that starts, further demonizing, white males or just whites in general. It's getting to the point where a lot of white females have to basically like virtue signal with every word to survive being around some sort of mixed race group. It's a very fake type of thing. It's not people living and getting along. It's really just people kind of keeping their mouth shut. And while you may have to do that through college, once you get into the real world, no one's going to really respect you for doing that. I mean, you can't be a journalist and keep your mouth shut. You can't be a researcher and keep your mouth shut. You can't really be in any media and just like have no opinion, because that's really like a mainstream media thing, and it just doesn't really exist anymore. It's already dead. The generations that are still kind of seeing things that way, and that's even a percentage of that, of those people, they're dying out, literally, I don't say that with glee, old people dying doesn't make me happy, but it's, that's just what's happening. And the times are changing. The baton is being passed. And some of these things from the really radical people are going to sneak into society like they already have. But if you're not one of those people, you're going to have just as much of a voice. Right? There won't be campus police, putting you into some, super leftist tribunal because somebody was mad you put your wee Willy Wonka in the wrong hole, and now they're, calling it rape. It's the police tend to be a bit more astute with these things. So you're actually going into a better world if you help make that happen. As long as you don't hinder it, it's already here for you. So don't fall to despair, I guess I'm saying. You're going to get out of college, and if you listen to a lot of people on the internet who are kind of like your older siblings, not quite your parents, right? We're not quite your parents' age. Then you're going to do pretty good. You're going to do pretty well. And you're going to know what the jobs are. People aren't even going to really have a clue what the jobs are going forward. And you're going to have that information already processed in your mind. And maybe you'll end up with like a interdisciplinary degree that puts together a degree that's perfect for some future job. And nobody really even realized it. And because you scour the internet for information, not only are you're like one of the few people who has the perfect degree for it. Think of the possibilities. Think of the positive possibilities. And I think that will kind of work out really well for everybody. Because there are so many people that once they get out of college and they hit the real world, where people don't care what you say, they're not going to provide you a safe space unless you are physically in danger. Then there's, like cops kind of like, be outside your house because, you're physically in danger. You're free to do a bunch of things that you probably weren't free to do in college. And you're also free to meet people who are outside of that whole system. The rules make a lot more sense when you hit that. It's not easy. In fact, that's the hardest time in anybody's life. This is a transition period, but it's going to be a lot easier for you than it is going to be for some kind of crazy left-wing radical who basically needs the world to change around them in order for them to fit in order for them to have a place. You're going to be going into the world already fitting in. And there's just like wide range of beliefs. The only thing that they aren't is like the alt-right and alt-left. The only thing that's really, like I said, off the spectrum are those two views. And unfortunately, you're in the alt-left most of the time. So it's, I don't know, write a book about it. Observe it. We could all be pretty much writers. Even if we have to kind of hire a ghostwriter to make it sound good. Learn critical thinking. Learn the tricks of propaganda and all that stuff and become an astute citizen that just goes, yeah, nice try. I've heard that bullshit before. I've seen that technique before. You can't put that past me. And you'll be not just in society and be a better fit, but you're already further along the track to the real leadership of society. The people that can write an article that makes hundreds of thousands of people go, oh, that makes a lot more sense than what the other asshole was saying. And suddenly, you've just changed the views of millions of people to something that makes more sense. That's leadership. That's the real leadership. Not people who just kind of get into politics to steal money and then they use all the PR tricks to kind of keep themselves in power. You could be something better than that because you have all this information at your fingertips. And you have all these people who are analyzing things and looking into things and putting things together. And yeah, you hop on YouTube the first couple of years, it's kind of like all listening and observing. Then you start really getting a kind of opinion of your own. Like, well, I like this guy, but I'm a little bit less of this than that guy. And you start really figuring out where you stand. And that is like the best thing you can get. That's the best thing anyone could give you. And in a lot of ways, all these efforts on the internet they're not just here because we like to hear ourselves speak. We're trying to give people that. We're trying to give people that into their life, that insight that makes life more worth it. So good luck. Good luck with your endeavors. Good luck with, paying for college and all that. I know it's rough. I know it's a rough time. But like I said, use these institutions for what they got. And, just try to stay away from all the other stuff that's going on there. Keep your head down. And a couple generations from now, you'll be totally in charge. And you could create real colleges again. Or create online colleges. We have a pure digital college system. Or who knows? I don't. By the time that happens, you're going to be the person who knows. So make yourself that person, man. And have some fun. Even if it means, hanging out with townies, getting away from the college crew. A lot of these places like in SUNY are in like these small towns where these great, amazing people, they'll teach you how to hunt and, prepare fish after you fish. And, they'll teach you all these awesome skills where you'll feel like you're actually kind of prepared. Like if there was a zombie apocalypse, I know it's my ongoing joke. But if there was a zombie apocalypse and you know how to prepare fish and know how to hunt and know how to grow food and all that stuff, you're not going to look at 100 people as some sort of revolution as even being a thing. It's they do fucking revolt. I got a lake, I got a tree, I'm good. I know where my squirrels hide the nuts, and acorn bread is pretty tasty. You'll have this kind of confidence that comes with being able to mend a sock, being able to do things in the real world as opposed to just imagining some world that would have to be created for you to fit in. Think about how hard that is. You're going to ask the other 7 billion, well, it's more than that now, the other 7 billion people in the world to change to fit you? Or are you going to figure out how to change from a child into an adult to fit into the world? Which one do you think would be easier? So, this one's a little bit short because I just kind of threw out a pretty good ending statement. So, I'm still a little high, so forgive some of the stumblings. Damn, these drugs. Anyway, yeah, that's the other thing. You'll be like, instead of thinking, oh, drugs are great, you're going to be like, oh, fuck. It's just going to make me drowsy. I got shit to do. Oh, crap. You're going to think of a cleanse as something really different. But we're all like on your side. Like just by virtue of being an adult, all the adults take your side. It's when you start talking about this kind of, this imaginary world that you want to create so that your childhood could fit into it. That's not going to fly. Nobody really supports that. They'll just kind of ignore you. But if you need help becoming a member of society, it's like everybody is on your side. Everybody wants to help you do that. So, hopefully in a couple of years I'll be saying, welcome to the fold. Hopefully it'll be like, welcome to my news media company. That would be awesome. So, don't stop yourself from thinking big for yourself. Trying to do good things. People know. People know when you're trying to do good things. Trying to make improvements. Trying to cause progress. Sorry, they're computing forever. I am a progressive. I just don't think you know what that means. Because some of the people calling themselves progressives are really just, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The fascist left kind of disguise themselves. Anyway, comment as you see fit. This is going to be up on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, yada, yada, yada. I think anytime you hit it, it goes to Spreaker.com. I'm not sure if there's any kind of commenting thing on that. I'm pretty sure there is. And also, if you'd like to support me, Patreon, bl-kirk 1. That's always greatly appreciated because I want to keep researching and pretty much do this as my career. So any support is greatly appreciated. And like I said, it's a quid pro quo. You might give me $1 or $2 a month. $1 or $3 or $5 actually are the levels. But I'll just be pouring out all of my work and giving away free information for, well beyond retirement, probably. So I look forward to interacting. Look forward from hearing from you. Look forward from hearing your stories, to hearing your stories. And good night and good luck.